G'day team, today I'm going to show you exactly how I painted up this Normandy British Airborne Red Devil in 1/35 scale. We'll be covering everything from the iconic Denison Smock camouflage all the way through to the weathering, washes and finishing touches that really bring the figure to life. As always, I'll explain everything as we go and show you a few simple tricks that can make a huge difference to the final product. For this figure, I'm using this Ammo Mig British Airborne paint set, but if you don't have these exact colors, just use whatever is closest from your collection or your local shop. With that being said, let's jump into it. To start off, we'll give our figure a nice even coat of black primer. I always like using black primer for figures because it instantly gives us shadows in all the deepest recesses and helps create some depth before we even start painting. Once that's fully dry, we'll take some white and spray it from directly above the figure. This is called Zenithal highlighting. Now we want to spray it directly from above and then work our way around the figure down to about a 45-degree angle. The idea is simple. We're mimicking how sunlight naturally falls onto a person. The upper surfaces become lighter while the lower remain darker. Even though we'll be painting over this, those highlights and shadows will subtly show through our paintwork later on and make the figure look much more realistic without any extra effort. Now we can move on to the iconic Denison Smock. If you're not familiar with it, the Denison Smock is probably the most recognizable piece of British Airborne equipment from the Second World War. We'll take Ammo Mig yellow-green and apply it all over the entire smock. If you're using an airbrush like me, build up the color slowly using very thin coats. We want that zenithal lighting to show through. If you're using a paintbrush, thin it down slightly and apply it as several smooth glazes rather than one thick coat. No matter your application, the aim here is to allow some of those zenithal highlights to show through very subtly. Next, we'll take the same yellow-green and add a small drop of brown to create a darker version. Now we're going to push those shadows even further. If you're new to figure painting, this might seem a little intimidating, but honestly, just give it a go. You learn more from trying something new than playing it safe every single time. Now this technique is really simple and will make your figure pop in the end result. We'll take this darker color and apply it anywhere that would have natural shadows if the sun was above our figure. So let's apply it under pockets, equipment, the arms, around straps, in folds and creases of the Denison Smock, around the waist, and anywhere natural shadows would form on your figure. Try and be as precise as you can here. At this stage, it will look very dark and contrasty, and that's completely normal. Let's trust the process for our next step. Now for my secret weapon, one of these little makeup sponges. They are honestly brilliant. If you don't have one, a kitchen sponge would work just fine. Now we'll create our highlight color. So we can take the original yellow-green and add a small amount of beige or tan color. We want an off-white rather than pure white so the highlights stay natural. We're essentially dry brushing with a sponge. So we're gonna load a tiny amount of paint onto the sponge, dab most of it off first on a paper towel, then we can gently work it over the entire smock. The reason this works so well is because the sponge naturally catches only the highest points of the figure. The highlights build up automatically while leaving those shadows and the base coat untouched. At the same time, it also blends everything together. You'll notice the figure instantly starts looking more three-dimensional, and it's one of my favorite figure painting tricks. Now comes the fun part. We'll load up some Ammo Mig Green Violet. I thinned mine roughly 2 parts paint to 1 part water. Using reference photos, begin painting irregular green shapes all over the smock. A really important thing to remember with Denison camouflage is that the camouflage wasn't painted continuously across every single surface. When you reach pocket edges, seams, stitching, and reinforcement patches, allow the shapes to stop and restart. Think of the camouflage as being applied to individual pieces of fabric before the jacket was assembled. Keep your shapes irregular, avoid neat circles, and avoid obvious patterns. Nature is random and camouflage should be too. Leave plenty of room for the red-brown color that's coming next. We want all 3 colors to share the jacket fairly evenly. Whenever possible, keep reference photos beside you and copy them directly. You really can't go wrong with the real thing. Once that's dry, we'll move on to the Ammo Mig Red Brown. Use this to fill many of the remaining areas. Again, keep the shapes random and organic. Some of these red patches will stand alone while others will overlap with some of the green. The biggest mistake beginners make here is using too much of one color. Step back every now and then and look at the whole figure rather than focusing on one area, because balance is the key. Some areas of the smock may have a little bit more red or a little bit more green. and that's fine, but overall we want it to look somewhat even. Once you're happy with the camouflage pattern, you'll probably notice something. The colors look very stark, especially that red brown. Now, if you look at wartime photographs and surviving smocks, you'll notice the colors appear much more blended together and less stark. To achieve that look, we'll use tan earth as an extremely thin glaze, and when I say thin, I mean incredibly thin. You should barely see it when testing it on your thumbnail. Apply several light glazes across the entire smock. This ties all the colors together and gives the uniform a faded, dusty Normandy appearance. You can already see the difference here. The camouflage becomes much more natural and believable with this glaze. Now we can move on to the 1937 pattern battle dress trousers. We'll use Vallejo Beige Brown for these. It's a nice straightforward color and gives a very good wool appearance. Paint them in carefully and make sure you're getting into all the folds and creases. Just like the smock, we'll create a darker version of the beige brown using a drop of black or darker brown and apply it to all the shadow areas. Again, these shadows are essentially in the folds and creases of the pants. Once dry, we'll use our sponge with a lighter beige brown mix, again a drop of tan or beige, and dry brush it using the sponge. Just like before, this creates highlights, preserves shadows, and blends everything together quite well. It's quick, easy, and incredibly effective. Now we can start painting all of the webbing and equipment. For this, I'm using German Camo Beige World War II. If you look at wartime references, much of the British Airborne webbing and equipment sits somewhere in this light khaki spectrum. This color also helps separate all the gear from the smock underneath, which makes the details stand out nicely. For his camouflage scarf, paint the whole thing with green violet. Then we can take red brown and add a few smaller camouflage patches. Keep them subtle, we don't want to overwhelm the base color. Paint the canvas anklets using German Camo Beige as well. For the ammo boots, use German Camo Black Brown. I really like this color because it gives a naturally worn leather appearance without looking too harsh. For the PIAT, olive drab for the launcher body. Khaki grey for the shoulder pad and canvas sections. And black for the grip and handle. For his Lee-Enfield, we're going to use flat earth for the wooden furniture. And black for the metal components. Once it's all dry, we'll take white aluminium and dry brush on the metal parts only to give a metallic shine. For the ammunition case, we'll use Iraqi sand and black for the fine details. Nice and simple. Paint the helmet with US olive drab. For the scrim and camouflage strips, we'll use khaki green, green violet, and beige brown. It doesn't really matter what colors you use here as long as you use a khaki color, a green color, and a brown color. Work one color at a time and distribute them fairly evenly throughout the helmet netting. We want a nice even spread for all the colors, just like our Denison Smock. For the rank insignia, start with beige brown as a base. For this part, you'll need a very fine tip brush. Then carefully paint the chevrons with green violet. Go very slowly here and control your brush as best as you can. Another secret of mine to make the details of your figure pop is to take German Camo Black Brown and paint in all the buckles, buttons, straps, and small fittings. This is a tiny step but makes a huge difference and really makes those tiny, fine details pop in the final product. We'll paint the hands in with flat flesh. Take your time here, we're nearly finished and don't want to ruin anything now. We'll come back to finish off our helmet and we'll take green grey and lightly dry brush the helmet netting. Remember, load the brush, wipe most of it off, and then lightly drag it over the raised details. The paint will only catch the highest points and instantly make the netting stand out, as you can see here. For the face, we'll use 2 or 3 thin coats of flat flesh. Then we'll take medium flesh and paint the eye sockets around the mouth and the neck. Brown rose on the cheeks and chin. Let's trust the process here. It may look very weird now, but it's going to come together once we use a blend. Use a very thin basic skin tone glaze over everything to blend it together. You might need 2 or 3 coats of this. Slowly build it up. The aim of the game is that we can still see those subtle colors underneath for the cheeks, the chin, and the eye sockets, but not so much that it looks unhuman and weird. We're simply creating natural variation on the skin, and we just want those subtle colors to come through on the glaze. I know it's really hard to see on the camera, but if you do this right, your figure will look great. For the eyes, use medium brown and simply dot them in. At this scale, painting the whites of the eyes usually causes more problems than it solves. For the maroon beret, mix together a red and a brown. Paint the beret badge in with white aluminium. At this scale, the badge doesn't have to be anything fancy. Now we're done painting, we can finally remove the head from the painting holder and glue it onto the figure. Next, apply 2 thin coats of AK Interactive Intermediate Gauzy Agent. This protects our paintwork so far and will create a smooth surface for the wash to flow over in our next step. Now we're moving on to weathering. Take a dark enamel wash and apply it all over the entire figure, yes, even the face. This is what's known as a sludge wash. What this does is create shadows, enhances details, defines equipment, makes textures stand out, and gives the figure a worn campaign look. Don't be shy with it, cover everything. This process is more about what we take off rather than what we put on. Leave the figure for around 5 to 10 minutes, then we'll take some enamel odorless thinner on a clean brush. Work slowly across the raised surfaces and flat surfaces. The thinner will reactivate the wash and allow you to remove it from the high points while leaving it in all the nooks and crannies and recesses. Think about what you're doing here. You're creating artificial shadows. Every crease, fold, pocket, buckle, and facial feature will stand out more once the wash is left only in those recessed areas. You'll notice the figure also starts to look dusty, worn, and field used. Exactly how a Normandy paratrooper should look. Take your time here. Again, it's all about removing the wash rather than applying it. You're the one controlling how clean or dirty the final figure becomes. Work with your figure until you're happy with how it looks. Once you are happy, we'll leave it to dry for at least 8 hours. After it is dry, apply 2 thin coats of Ammo Mig Ultra Matte Lucky Varnish. This protects everything we've done so far and removes any unwanted shine. This is the final step that's going to make our figure look lifelike. And that's our British Airborne Red Devil all finished up. Hopefully you've picked up a few tips and tricks that you can use on your own figures, whether you're painting British Airborne, German Infantry, Americans, or anything else. If you enjoyed the video or learnt something new, make sure to comment and leave a like. All interactions really help the channel grow. If you are new to the channel, subscribe so you don't miss out on future videos. Until next time, happy modeling, and I'll catch you in the next one. Until next time, happy modeling, and I'll catch you in the next one.